There are stories about every hero, how they became great.
Now, it's your turn.
Fear not, citizens, hope has arrived, because we are here talking My Hero Academia. This is the Amateur Otaku podcast, a show where we chat, argue, and wax poetic about everything we love in anime and manga. We're back talking My Hero Academia, Season 7, Part 1. I'm All Mike, the number one hero. Joining me, of course, is the Rooster of Peak is Growing. Isaac, can you explain this one? I try to keep up with all your names, but I get lost on this one.
I mean, didn't you see the trailer I sent on the StreamYard, Discord, about a couple of days ago?
So this is the part, Isaac, where you have to play the bit and explain it, because there's an audience that is not in our Discord server.
Okay. Let us put it like this. This is a manga about the rooster who is wandering the land of Japan and fighting demons. And it's getting an anime.
Also joining us is Cliff in La La Land, a.k.a. Lemillion's number one stan. We'll get to the rooster thing another day, I guess. That'll make sense eventually. Cliff, welcome back. How you been, bro?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm chilling. I'm actually very excited to see a rooster anime. I don't know why, but I'm like, great, a non-human character for once. Great, I'm all for it. I'm in for it. But yeah, I'm chilling. Ready to talk about My Hero. Been watching this every Saturday. This is the first time I've even watched like each episode weekly, so it's a brand new experience for me, pretty much. But I'm ready to get into it.
Nice. Yeah, I've been watching weekly since like season 2 or 3. It's a lot better than reading it weekly, I will tell you that. Each episode's adapting like a month's worth of manga content, for what it's worth. So,
okay.
Yeah. We are in the middle of a break if you're listening to this episode as it drops. There was a break from the last episode, about 2 weeks. Lights fade to rain. We'll get to that. This is a spoiler discussion, and if you are not caught up with the My Hero Academia sub, get out of here. The dub's about an episode behind, so just kick the can down the road a little bit, because we don't want to spoil the last episode that just came out. Going back to the start of this season, we're going about 10 weeks back at this point. We are introduced to Star and Stripe in episode 1, a big-time maverick from the West. What did you think about this episode? Because this was a very controversial point in the manga, and Isaac and I will explain why. But in the anime, I feel like they handled it a lot better. So what's your perspective, Cliff?
Yeah, and first off, you just reminded me it's been 10 weeks since I literally forgot that the Star and Stripe episode happened. Like, so many things have taken place within these 10 weeks that it literally blew my mind. Yeah, I think this was a strong start to a season finale, if you will. Star and Stripe, she's a great character. Loved how they executed, not only just displaying her powers, but also explaining how it works within context of this world and how unique of a power it is, and also, just the commentary on that type of power. I think it really works for me. I wish there was more. Like, she might be my number 2, like, at least big hero in that sense. Loved her, love her team up with, her fighter jet pilots behind her, backing her up. Like, everything just works this episode. And of course, just what she did at the end of the episode, just giving, our favorite Teen Titans, as I like to call them now, just that chance to, overcome and come back stronger and get a chance to actually devise a plan and, figure out how to beat these characters. It was great for me. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to get a figure for Star and Stripe. Like, I want one so bad.
Yeah, Star and Stripe's impact on this series is insane, because in the manga, I think she's only in 5 chapters. In the anime, she had 2 episodes. And it's like, that is such a small amount of time, but she had like the biggest impact on the story and on the fans, whether good or bad, because of it. Isaac, I know that you binged watched this show because you weren't really watching it until we decided to do the review. What was it like going back to Star and Stripes fight with All for Shiggy, as we like to call him now?
How should I put it? This fight still annoyed me because she is basically, without going in, she's basically just a plot device more than a character to an extent. But I will say this: the anime handled this way better than the manga. I dare even say that it's on par with the. I know it sounds like a broken record, but the whole anime doing the proper way to fill in the blanks for the manga, because in the manga, for those that don't know, since it's have been covered in the anime right now, it's just that she comes, she gets defeated, boom, boom, bada bim. I don't even think it was. Was it just 2 or 3 chapters?
It was 5.
Was it 5? Okay, it just came and went like it was like that, it felt.
Yeah, I'm going to take you back a couple years when we were covering this when it happened. And this is why it's controversial, just to lay the groundwork a little bit for the anime onlys and for Cliff specifically, because you're a part of that, right? Star showing up and like immediately dying was so controversial because, mind you, we've had like a year and a half between the seasons, so it feels a lot longer. But a lot of the female characters got hit really hard in succession. We had Mirako losing limbs, we had Midnight getting killed by Gigantomachia, and then the strongest female character, the strongest hero in America comes in, and then she gets immediately taken out. So it was very, like, all of that happened in like a 3-month span. In the anime, a full year has passed between those events. You probably don't even think about what happened to Mirako because it's been so long. It was like the start of last season. But it was really controversial. Like, why are all the strong female characters getting like maimed and tortured and killed in this book? And it felt really awkward and bizarre. And like Isaac said, she came in kind of like a plot device where it's like she's here to nerf Shigaraki. I will say the anime does, I mean, it's taking the same material, but I think it just translates a lot better. One, the distance of time makes it not feel as oppressive watching all these characters like fall in a row. But also that fight is just like, reading it was cool, the art was cool, but like seeing it in motion, like seeing her grab these freaking lasers and turn it into like this giant spear and the music swelling, and like, it's probably the best animated singular episode of My Hero Academia we've ever gotten until recently, right? With like the last episode. I like it a lot more, and Horikoshi, the author, has come out and said like a lot recently that he got to a point where he just started writing what he wants to see animated. So I feel like around like season 3, he's like, okay, look, we got an anime going. I just want to see cool shit. I want to see them have cool powers and have cool fight scenes. And so I think he started, instead of writing it as a manga, he started writing it as a screenplay, in a sense, which is why it read a little weird. But watching it, it's like, oh, I see it. Because notably, in our last review, I said the upcoming season is the worst arc in the series. But surprisingly enough, this might be the best season of the show because the adaptation is just so much stronger.
And I'm gonna make sure I word this correctly, because not even knowing that context for me, when Star and Stripe just pops up, I'm just like, oh, here we are. It's like our heroes are already at the bottom of, essentially in the story. Like they're at their worst in this point. So I'm like, they need something to come in. And I guess, as an outsider looking in, she just seemed like, oh, cool. Here's, number 1 hero in America, and I'm guessing compared to All Might, she's the number 2 hero in general overall. I don't know.
She has they keep saying she has powers comparable to All Might, and she's the U.S.'s number 1 hero. So I assume she's like the second strongest person on the planet. Honestly,
that's the vibe I kind of got. At least.
Honestly, looking at her skill set, I say she's more powerful than All Might. But you know what? Go off, I guess.
Probably also. Which else, and to add to is like we didn't really get to see much of her, so I can't, we can't get the full scope. But It was
Yeah.
like, for what I was given, I was very entertained, and I wouldn't be mad if, like, hey, they somehow created a spinoff about her adventures in America. Like, I would be down with that. I would be very curious to just see what this character has been up to, because
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, for me it works, and I can kind of see that. I also understand everyone's I even hate to say controversial, but like I also understand people's gripes with that, especially when it comes to Mirko and all that. So I'm like, yeah, looking back, I'm like, yeah, a lot of our strong female characters, a lot of our favorite female characters have been getting nerfed or just getting the short end of the stick in at least recent arcs, I will say. So
Yeah.
so I understand it.
Yeah. It's again one of those things where when you're reading it week to week, because again, like the Mirko thing and the Star and Stripe thing are like, they might be like 15 chapters apart. But
Okay.
since we've had seasons, like a year in between, it doesn't feel as oppressive. That's why, again, I feel like it works a lot more in this context. I also just love the character of Star, of her like, hey, All Might needs me. And she just gets her boys and goes, regardless of coming up with a plan. She's like, I've got this. The plot armor of Shigaraki, or All for Shiggy, as we call him, because clearly he's not Shigaraki, otherwise she would have won that fight. Bugs me a little bit, but she stalled for time, and that's all they really needed. Like, they needed somebody. One, they needed to show how powerful he is, because Deku, there's no way Deku would have beaten him if she doesn't step in and like kill all of those quirks, which is also a fascinating thought, that she just went in and just destroyed all these powers for All for One. Going through the rest of the season, though, a lot happens. You're right, Cliff. Like, you started saying you forgot this even happened. Like, we get the traitor reveal finally after like 7 seasons of build up, and that was another thing that was funny in the manga, because he leans a lot, really hard, into Invisible Girl being the traitor and like the red herring of that. And the anime, they're just like, we're not doing. It
You
muted me.
muted yours.
It muted
I
me.
muted my.
It muted me. When did you stop hearing me?
You talked about the Invincible Girl being the traitor.
Oh, yeah.
Focus on that.
It was only like a few seconds. We
Okay.
heard, yeah.
You heard pretty much everything. It was a red herring, is all. But we
And
get.
I will have. Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go on.
Good, Isaac, jump in.
I was just gonna say that I remember me calling it how they handled that one, if you recall correctly.
So again, most of the audience did not listen to those episodes. So just, how'd you call it?
I said that they were using a certain someone's ability to make it look like that he didn't lie when All for One called him. So.
Oh, yeah, when we get Shinso. Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. Aoyama being the traitor. First off, Cliff, did you remember that there was even a traitor subplot? Because I feel like they haven't touched on that in like 3 seasons.
Nope, not at all.
Okay.
And mind you, I've been rewatching season 1 on Netflix. So I'll break it down for you real quick. When they revealed that Aoyama was, I think I pronounced his name right, was the mole, it threw me, because I was just like, y'all never gave any instance of him being in relation to All for One at any point, at least from what I don't remember, or at least from what I remember. I was just like, okay, I can see it, like, it works, it makes a lot of sense, because he's barely in the show, unless it's for a comedy gag here or there. It's like, oh, my naval laser, I use it, I feel like I have to throw up afterwards. Like, cool, wonderful. But then it just shifts, and it's just like, oh, he's been being used this entire time. I wish I kind of knew. I don't know if it necessarily gripped me as much as I was hoping for. Like, it still sucks, and still it's sad to see like this kid being manipulated, and his family also being manipulated and being used as pawns in this, an All for One's very vicious scheme and what have you. But in that moment, it's just like, okay. I feel like if it was a character that I had a little bit more time with, I probably would have cared a little bit more. But cool.
Yeah.
This is it. We'll keep going.
I feel like, because they like, you rewatching the series, I think is going to help. Because they do make it very clear that something's up with him throughout the course of the series. Like, especially at the end of season 1, all the kids are separated. All Might's fighting this Nomu at the USJ. all the kids are accounted for except for him, and he even looked like he straight up breaks the fourth wall and is like, "Did anybody know where I was?" And he's just like, "It's a secret," and he looks at the camera, and it's just like, okay. And you think that's just like the show being quirky and funny, and it's like, oh no, this guy was just literally not in the fight because he wasn't supposed to be in the fight. Or when they get the training camp gets attacked, Dobby just looks at him and keeps walking. He attacks everyone else, but he just looks at him and he just keeps on going. And it's like, okay, Dobby knew not to mess with Aoyama.
Okay.
I do agree with the
subtleties that I missed out on, essentially, or I didn't pick up on in the first place. Okay.
Yeah, or him saying that he and Deku are very alike, how their bodies were not developed to handle their powers, which is like, yeah, that's weird. Like, if you're born with it, you should be able to handle it. So we probably should have picked up on that he didn't have that quirk. It's very subtle. I do agree with you though that it hits harder if it was a character we cared about. Like, I just don't really care about Aoyama that much. And that's saying something, because this is a roster of like 20 kids in that class alone, and he's probably like bottom 5 for me out of all 20. So it's like, it may hit more if it was Mineta, if we're being completely honest. That would have been a surprise nobody saw coming.
You would think, but yeah, it's interesting. I am curious to see. I do like kind of how it ends with them using him as a device to trap all for one and what have you. Like it comes around and whatnot. But yeah, if it was someone that we had a little bit more experience with, I'll say, I feel like it probably would have hit harder. But it's also a decision that, like, I'm not necessarily angry at. I'm just like, okay, cool. This is it. This is who y'all used. We're gonna rock with it for the rest of the show. Like, we're at a high point, so like I'm not about to let this one thing just like, I don't even want to say ruin. It's just like lessen what's happening. What's unfolding in front of us at the moment. I
love that you called them the Teen Titans, and we just got to like the Judas contract arc of their run. It's like, yeah, we're doing that. All right. Does that make Stain like Deathstroke for this universe? Oh man,
maybe. I'll get around. Let me think about that for like a day.
We'll get back to it. Isaac, thoughts on the whole trader situation?
I have to disagree that it wouldn't make sense about Mineta. All for one, just to promise him you will get every attractive girl on the that you want if you help me out. And he would just said, "Deal." In all seriousness, I do agree with you about, if you really think about it, going back, it does make sense because there is those subtle hints that, especially with the one with Dabe, that there's more to him that meets the eye, even if there's you don't think about it at first, so to speak. When you saw that at first, you can just, okay, he don't think he's a threat, he moves on like that, because let's face it, he is no Deku, no Shoto. You get what I mean. He isn't exactly the S tier in that class. So
it's so interesting hearing, like, I feel like rewatching or rereading this series once it's wrapped up is going to be so fascinating, because the fact that so many people didn't pick up on Dabi being Toya just like blows my mind, because for me it felt like it was clear as day, but I love that surprised everybody.
It was a theory I had, but I was like, I have no way to confirm this. I'm just like, okay, it felt almost too easy.
Yeah.
Like the first few seasons. I'm just like, cool, I get it. Blue Flames, this guy, number 2 hero, Endeavor got fired, this one kid got fired. I was like, it would be too easy to even recognize it. So for a while, I was just like, oh, he just happened to be a guy that also has flames, and he just hates superhero society as well. So like, we just gonna rock with that. But then after things started developing, I was like, okay, all right, yeah, he's somebody's sibling. They'll reveal that at some point, but okay. Like,
yeah.
Which is hilarious.
I love when we first meet him though. Like he sees Shoto and he's just like, "Hi, Shoto," and it's just like, At first, you're like, oh, he must have learned who Shoto was because of the sports festival. Like, sure. But it's like, no, he acted like he knew him. And it's not until you rewatch, you're like, oh, crap. Yeah, of course. But, yeah, so we get to the point where they decide to use Aoyama. Deku extends his hand. Again, the entire theme of the show is just being a helping hand and reaching out to help those that need it. He gives him his hand, says, we can make this right. Aizawa comes up with a plan with All Might, and I love that Aizawa, even in this hospital bed, comes up with the ultimate plan that's probably going to help them win this war. It better. This is the last arc. It better win this war. Otherwise, this is a bleak ending. The plan is to divide and conquer, essentially, right? So they want to break them up in like 8 teams. They have to keep All for One and Shigaraki about 10 kilometers apart. Deku has to fight Shigaraki. Shoto has to fight Dabi. Endeavor and Hawks have to fight All for One. Toga and Uraka are going to be battling along with Asui. And I think that's all of them. Oh, and Spinner is somewhere. We don't know what they're doing with Spinner yet. That's to be revealed.
I'm giving you props for remembering every character's name and who's being matched up. Because for a second, I was just like, right, this character. Like, I can visualize it, but I can't remember all these names.
When you've been reading this book for like 8 years and watching the show in sub and dub, they tend to stick.
But then again, also, Mike, you're like a library when it comes to remember the names in shows, stuff you're passionate
I'm a certified lore whore. That's literally my hero name. So, you know, it all sticks.
I didn't expect you to go PG-13 like that on the comment, but okay.
I mean, it's a fact. So we break these up, and I think this is going to help us guide the conversation a bit more, because now we can just talk about the individual fights and all that stuff, as opposed to me trying to remember the plot of this story I read 2 years ago. So I guess we'll start with the Todorokis. We'll just go right back there. The pinnacle of this fight. Isaac, I know this is your favorite arc storyline in all of My Hero. What was it like seeing this animated Dabi versus Shoto?
It was the best fight in the season so far, in my book. Honestly, but that's me being biased because, as I said before, part of me would have liked to see the Todoroki family as the main characters, because that family dynamic is so fucking interesting, and that it could have its own book, to be quite honest.
Yeah, Dabi's storyline is so fascinating because in this season we also get to see what happened, because Shoto asks him, why didn't you come back home once, you recovered? And we get that flashback of him being taken in by All for One, which is insane, and like being fixed up by the doctor. And he is like still mentally stunted. One of the favorite things that I noticed, especially watching it in the dub, is that when he thinks, he still has the voice of that little kid, because mentally he is still back there. Even though he's got his like deeper, gruff voice when he actually speaks. Up here, he never grew in those 3 years he was in that coma. And so I think that's also plays into why he acts the way he does, because he's deep down is still that kid looking for the love of his father. And so when he goes back to the house wanting to see what has changed, and he just sees Endeavor like beating Shoto, that's literally what like just sets him on the path of like, oh yeah, this is BS, this guy's the worst, Hero Society is crap, and that sets him on the path. And I think you're right, that subplot in this entire story to me is so strong, because it's the flip side of the coin. We see All Might and what he represents, and then we see like the dark side of the Hero Society that's been festering here. Cliff, I know you love the Todorokis too. Lay your thoughts on me.
Yeah, I agree with what both of you say in a lot of sections of the story. Dabi is a character who, this is what happens, and I'm talking within context of My Hero specifically.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you have someone whose parent who who strives to be the number one hero, but for the wrong reasons almost. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like this is like Dobby had to watch this. Dobby watched this man, not just abuse him, but also abuse his entire family. And then every time Dobby tries to come to help or comes to ask for help, Endeavor just shuts it down, et cetera, time and time again. So, so for me, this arc was just seeing was it was just it was just a big revelation, just seeing, hey, this is what happens when you have kids who are born with these quirks and who are born with these special abilities, and they don't have anyone to actually guide them, especially when it's like Dobby's, where the more fire he uses, the more like physical harm he like causes on himself. Like
Yeah.
that can mess with somebody. And when you're in a coma after that, and you come home and see nothing has changed, it's like how do you even try and get help or try to rectify that situation or that problem? Like, what path do you take? And just seeing
Yeah.
how Dobby turns out, it's just like, yeah, this guy is dangerous. This guy has so much trauma, and I don't know. Like, this is just a manifestation of seeing someone not be able to actually confront that trauma and actually try and find better ways to fix it or to even live with it. So I don't know, Dobby. I think Dobby's personally a better representation of why of like the worst things about superhero society, and whatnot, at least like how it's presented in this world. We're
Yeah.
ranking heroes, we're different hero divisions. These heroes are working for this company, these heroes are working for that company or this government, whatever. It's just like it's very interesting. It's still something that I'm wrapping my brain around. Though I wish this like arc was a little bit longer. Like it kind of all just ends in one episode, which is fine. We have a lot to get through in this final season, but what was given to me, I really enjoyed. I like again, Dobby was one of my like top two villains in the show. So I was really waiting, and I was really excited for whatever they were going to do with this character. And but yeah, it's very interesting, especially in comparison to Shoto, who feels
Yeah.
like he feels like almost inadequate a little bit,
Right.
especially because of his dual powers. Whereas here's a guy, he's like, I don't care. My older brother, he's over here just doing whatever. Like he's gained full control of his powers. Whereas me, I still have to struggle because I'm living under the shadow of, again, Endeavor. So it's all very interesting for me, and it's going to be something I'm going to look back on, and like probably at least once the show's finished, I'm probably going to watch like the compilations of that arc and just see how we got here again,
Yeah.
essentially.
There's gonna be a Todoroki family edit that like compiles this story into like one massive YouTube video. One thing that I have learned to respect about Kohei Horikoshi as an author, I know I speak in manga terms a lot when talking about My Hero, but it's because I mostly read it.
Mm,
But one thing I love about his work as an author is that he's clearly inspired by George Lucas and the philosophy of symmetry and it rhyming and coming back to something, right? Everything you need to know about My Hero Academia you learn in those first two seasons. And Dobby is the manifestation of Stain, right? Of this is what happens when you have false heroes. Like All Might, symbol of peace, symbol of justice, that sets everybody on the right path. That's the standard you should aspire to. But then you have Endeavor, who is literally what happens when you have like people who aren't equipped to be heroes being put on a pedestal, and how that one ruins the mentality of like somebody like Inji Todoroki, but then has the ramifications where it's just like generational trauma passed down to each child. Because remember, Toya is the oldest, and he feels like a failure because he was only born because of his potential to have a fire and ice quirk. So he feels like a failure already, and then he notices that he keeps getting siblings because they keep trying to replicate like or create this perfect power. So that by itself is just damaging from his POV, but also the other siblings, especially when you get down to Shoto and he's the one with that power, and now going back to like season one, he rejects that power entirely. He's like, I'm going to only use my mother's half, and I'm only going to use ice. And so that's why he's also nerfed by the time you kind of get here, where it's like, yeah, he never trained his fire because of his father. He was doing it out of spite, and now it might come to bite him in the butt. That's why though when we get Shoto's story, I said all that to get back here of like Shoto embracing who he is, right? And we get the flashback to the sports fest. It's your power, not your father's, right? Make it your own quirk. That really kind of rings true of how even all the way up to now, he's able to reject Endeavor. He's not using it how Endeavor envisioned him to. He was able to make something new and become his own person. And that's what I love about Shoto's story. And I love that there's a line that he says where like even though we all had messed up childhoods, you're the only one who's hurting people. And it's like, yeah, you still have the responsibility to not be a dick, regardless of your circumstances. So I think the Todoroki story was really fascinating. It was beautifully animated. The score was great. Like, it was incredible. I agree with you, though. It maybe could have been a couple more episodes. We will get back to it, though, because if you guys saw, like, Dobby's chest starts, like, glowing, and he's in the new intro. So maybe not everything's finished over there. I do find the team ups interesting though. Like Endeavor's sidekicks being there with Shoto makes sense. Why is Ida there in that bulky, hot suit fighting amongst two firebenders?
My guess was that he was Plan B, and Plan B was necessarily a idea to get Shoto out. Like if anything goes wrong, you
Okay,
zoom in and grab Shoto, and then we just go and dip. Because I don't
that makes
see unless
that
he's
makes
like,
sense.
or option two is he makes a twister that
Oh,
sucks
like
all
the
the oxygen
Flash.
out. Yeah, like that's my only other option. I was just like, that's the only way this makes sense as to why he's here. And Jenny was here to be quick, fast, and in a hurry and get
Yeah.
either everybody out or stop or like choke Dobby's air supply, whatever. I don't know how the science, but the superhero science behind it all works. But like that was my guess, at
Okay.
least.
That makes a lot more sense because I'm like, what? One, he's probably sweating in that armor because like I'm sure that is just unbearable flames. But it's like, what is he gonna do? Just go up there and like kick him? But yeah, like helping them get out. That makes a lot more sense, honestly. So those are the
And I also wanted to
Todoroki.
mention
Go
real
ahead.
quick. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was
You're
gonna say
good. Good.
I also noticed that with that there's like a theme of obsession here as well on this side of the story, specifically because of Endeavor and like what his goals were. Trying to give birth to a child that has fire and ice abilities or quirks, and essentially trying to be the number one hero. This, and it just continues a succession. With Dobby also obsessing over what happened to him, and also obsessing with the depictions of superhero society. So I think it's something I just picked up after you had mentioned the parallels and the George
Yeah.
Lucas section of it all, especially within relation to Deku and All Might. We're just like, oh, it's all for one, but like on the other side here, we have a good number of people who are obsessing over this, not just one idea, but like a very specific idea of what society is and whether society needs heroes. So it's just something I literally just noticed like as you were talking.
That obsessive nature, yeah, it's literally two sides of the same coin though. Because like Deku being obsessive of like I want to be like All Might was also detrimental for him too, right? Like he kept breaking his arms trying to punch like All Might, and eventually had to get to a point where it's like maybe you can't use your arms, use your legs, and he invents shoot style, right? So it's that symmetry is still very much there of like yeah, being obsessive is not good in on either side of the equation. I'm gonna take us to Endeavor. I feel like that is just the next logical step, even though that's not what happens in the show. I think they cut to like Uraraka after that, but we're gonna go just straight to Endeavor and Hawks because we're on that theme of Endeavor wants to atone for all of the mistakes he's made in the past. And I'm just gonna lob a very simple question to both of you. Does he deserve it, and do you care after learning everything that has happened?
Go for it, Isaac.
How should I put it? Oh, I don't know how I should talk about it, considering manga spoilers and all that. Yes, but
I mean, to be fair, manga spoilers. There's not many more manga spoilers
yeah, it's
ahead
true.
of us.
That's
We're in the last arc, so like I
fair
think you
enough.
can
But
still figure it out.
Is he an undeniable piece of shit that should have jail time? Fuck yes. He should have jail time and a lot, like, I don't know how long, but he should have jail time. But is he Hitler if we go that far? No. So he could. So he could be. Is he Homelander if you go with another superhero comics or Injustice Superman? No. So feel like he could have a shot at getting a second chance. It will
This
take.
is interesting, considering
It
you
will
hate
take.
Bakugo and he's done way less.
Uh, there is a personal reason for that, and you know it.
I'm just making commentary.
But there's but yes, but there's a different point of view with the Bakugo situation compared to this. But we go next to that. But yes, I do think. But if he doesn't get redeemed, so to speak, if you or whatever you want to call it, I wouldn't exactly say it's bad because it's at the same time deserve it. It's just a potato situation, if that makes any sense.
Okay. Okay. Cliff, what are your takes on Inji Todoroki? Especially like we cut to him pretty much right after Shoto's fight, and that's a lot.
And this is specifically Endeavor, right?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm
Endeavor.
gonna ask because again, this is the first time I've heard this man's name fully. I just call him Endeavor whenever he pops up. But but yeah, to answer your questions, do I care? Yes, because I'm also just a fan of characters who do bad things and like writers just trying to find ways to, legitimate ways to redeem them. Like I always think of Venom in this
Yeah.
context and what have you, and like obviously very different circumstances and all that stuff, but just at the bare minimum of just hey, bad guy, bad alien, whatever, blah blah blah. They done some messed up things, and now writers have
Hey,
done work
look,
to
it's Endeavor, the
redeem them.
Pokemon.
Oh, that's cute. Oh, but yeah, like I if it's interesting, yes, because obviously we don't want to negate anything that this man has done,
Yeah.
and and I agree. I'm like, yeah, there has to be some form of payment or some form of like he has to pay for what he's done, but at the same time, I was just like, afterwards, if there's some redemption, why not explore it, especially for the family. Obviously Dabi will never forgive him. Shoto, I think, can start, and I believe there are two other siblings and their wife. It seems like they at least, I don't even want to say understand, but they've accepted what
Yeah.
has happened to
So
them. At least they talk to this man. So I'm like, if that's something that the characters, if it makes sense for that family, sure. If not, then don't even waste the time trying to do that. Essentially,
yeah, the Todorokis. Of course, you have Inji Endeavor. You have Ray, the mother, who he put in a mental hospital because of how much he abused her and broke her. You have Toya, who was presumed dead but became Dabi. You have Fuyumi, I think. No, Natsuo. Natsuo's the next kid, the next son, who was just like disassociated with everything, and it just like pretty much cut the entire family off if it wasn't for his younger siblings. Fuyumi's the girl who wants to keep everything together, even though it's hell. And then we have Shoto, who is again like a mix of all of them, where it's like he wants to disassociate a little bit, but also he wants to stick it to his father too, kind of like Toya in a way, at least early on. Um,
just family
Endeavor's
trauma. Like,
it's insane. This is one of the reasons why like I agree with both of you that this is one of the strongest parts of the elements of the story, but I don't think they can carry their own title, like their own spin-off or manga, mainly because what more can we do that we haven't already done here, you know? And if you take the entire Todoroki plot and like just made those individual episodes, you might get 7 out of the all of My Hero Academia. And if you want to do like limited series and just like made it a 10 episode anime, you probably could squeeze that, but I don't know if it has the juice to go much farther than that. Unless you do like post stuff that happens after this series and like Shoto having to grow up in a post world where he like defeats Dabi. But that's the My Hero like sequel that we're not going to get into. This fight though, he and Hawks, the plan is just for those two to defeat All for One, and this is the part of the story where I'm like, okay, we didn't plan this out very well, did we? Because we're just gonna send 2 people to fight All for One. What the heck are we thinking?
The number
Especially
one
with Hawks
hero
being
and
injured.
essentially right. Number one hero and Hawks is he's not even at 100%, but like they're the two best people y'all can send at this time. Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's very strange. Like we'll get to it in a second, but like we sent the big three to help with Shigaraki. It's like maybe they should have sent some other people to help with All for One too. Like I feel like Mirio and Hado probably could have helped there instead. But they put up a decent fight. We even get Tokoyami and Jiro. What is Jiro's hero name? Is it just Earphone Jack? I feel like that's so basic.
I
If
think
it's
so.
just that's basic as hell. She needs to do better. She needs to get a publicist. But they team up to fight All for One. This fight is not the most like engaging as far as animation wise, but just story wise. This episode is called Extras. And then we get Wounded Hero, Burning Bright and True. But Extras is a fascinating title because that is notably what Bakugo calls the others, right? The rest of his class are the extras because they're not important. So seeing these 2 characters that I'm sure nobody on Earth expected those to be 2 of the characters to fight All for One, show up and actually help put up a fight, I thought was very fascinating. I wanted you guys' thoughts on that battle, though.
I think it works. 'Cause I think one of the great things about this show is that is always in every situation. You never know what hero could add any like percentage of momentum, even if it's a little.
Yeah.
I'm just like, cool. You're giving me character combinations and fights that are like, oh, I didn't even think about this. Like we didn't mention, but like when they first started their plan and they separate each other, just like, and as we unravel, we see where all the other heroes are. I'm just like, oh, this man literally, or at least it seems like this man has thought about every single portion of the fight and like everyone's mechanics and roles within there.
Yeah.
And I will say that like I get it within this one fight. It does feel a little like, hey, maybe we could have thought about this a little bit more. But I don't know what other heroes could fight All for One in the air. Like
That's also fair. You have to like if the plan is to keep him off the ground, yeah, you probably do need flyers, and we don't have a lot of those.
we
So
barely had them at
we barely
all
have Hawks too.
throughout
If
this
we're being
entire show.
honest, like we got like 1.5 at this point.
Like this man has feathers. He doesn't even have a full set of wings yet.
That fits just visually. I wonder if part of that was like the artist didn't want to just draw like his gigantic wings anymore. Like we're just gonna nip those down because Nejire, she has short hair now, and one of the notes in the book because like she usually has like really long hair. The note in the book, Horikoshi's just like, I got tired of drawing it, so she gets a haircut, and it's just like, oh, all right.
It, it's sort of like how Akira Toriyama openly stated that the Super Saiyan color is yellow just because he was tired of making the hair black all the way. So he had an option of just drawing it white in the manga. You just have to draw it like that.
I love details like that where it's just like the artist is like, yeah, this wasn't just a creative choice. I just didn't want to do that anymore. So this is why we did this. It's like okay, but yeah. So this battle is very interesting. I love just like the warfare of like seeing All for One's tactics too. Of like he's just gonna like talk and break you down mentally, and he's always gonna have a card up his sleeve, whether that is revealing to All Might that he took in Tomura Shigaraki and warped him, or he tells Endeavor that he's the reason Dabi is alive. Like it probably would have been better if Toya just died that day instead of like living and becoming this monster and killing countless people. And so having that, and then having Endeavor again have that internal battle of like realizing what that obsession did and how that ruined his family, and in turn became a big part of this war. Because like if Shoto didn't have to go fight his evil brother, he could probably be helping Deku right now or helping Endeavor right now. And it's like a huge part of this entire situation is directly your fault because you were a piece of crap. Which I think, like you were saying, seeing bad people learn or try to be better is so fascinating. And I love that Horikoshi has taken the steps of saying, we're not going to redeem him. Like, he's very adamant, like, he's not going to be redeemed, but he can atone for what he did and make up for his mistakes, which I think is a fascinating angle for it.
Yeah, and in just like I think even with like there's a very interesting dynamic between him and Hawks that I also really like in this battle. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily think they like each other, but they're like we have a goal. We let's get this done. You know, because they've been partners together since they fought that Nomu. Was it a
Hmm.
season or 2 seasons ago?
That
Probably.
was season 4, so now 3 seasons ago.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's crazy. But yeah, there's just an interesting dynamic because I don't because I'm still trying to figure out what these two, I guess, just in terms of character interaction, what they really give each other, and Hawks kind of just also feels like he he was also kind of similarly used in a way just by the government in this
Yeah.
story. So I'm just looking at him like, oh, here's one guy who caused a lot of trauma to his family and all that stuff, and now he's being partnered with someone who not necessarily went through a similar trauma, but was also shaped and raised and used to be a very specific instrument of, I guess, heroism. I'll say, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And watching these two fight together, I'm like, y'all clearly work well together. Like y'all mindsets, and at least when it comes to combat, like this clearly fits. But I don't know. But I think it feels more so like, oh, y'all just work together. Y'all aren't friends. Y'all aren't
Yeah.
buddies. Y'all aren't even like work friends. It's just like, oh, we have the same goal. We both shared this one unique experience, and we're the best two suited to handle this job, at least right now. And I really think
Hmm.
that's interesting within this context,
Yeah.
especially in comparison to every other character.
Hawks is a fascinating character in general. That's why he's one of my favorites because of that. Of like, he comes in like just in the context of the story alone. Like, I think he's probably the latest addition to the cast, like major addition to the cast, because he's introduced in that fight with the Nomu. Essentially, like he's probably introduced an episode before that, him and Mirko, and he just becomes like a main character from that point forward, which is interesting in and of itself. But also his relationship and his dynamic within the story of like, yeah, he is very much similar to Toya, and maybe that's also why the relationship is kind of weird. Because like, in another world, maybe that could have just been Endeavor and Toya. You know, of like, yeah, they can work together. He's at his dad's agency. They don't get along the best, but you know, like, I think that's an interesting part of their dynamic, especially when you look at a lot of the cast has a lot of their like they've all been used, I guess, in some form or fashion. Shigaraki was being groomed by All for One. Dabi was made into what he is because of Endeavor. Even Izuku is walking down this road that All Might set him on that he was not prepared for. Like when he gives him the hair in episode 1, he didn't think he'd have to do this, and All Might didn't reveal that he'd have to do this. you know? So like I think it's interesting that Hawks is also another segment of that of like, yeah, the government saw his power and they want to use it for their own gain, and that changes who he is too, right? Like I don't know if he grew up and went to UA like a normal student. I don't know if he kills twice, last season. Maybe he tries to save twice, like Deku tried to
And he's
save
an
Aoyama.
Ayama counterpart as well. You know, like he ends
Yeah,
up being a tool for them to infiltrate the League of Villains. I think it is.
yeah.
I believe. Mm.
He tried to get in with the League of Villains, yeah, and he was successful at it, and he did his job there, and so that's why I think that's what makes that dynamic interesting though, because he is very similar to these other characters that Endeavor kind of helped mold, and I think that's also why there's that weird distance between them, because Hawks, being an Endeavor fan, because he grew up idolizing Endeavor, and then seeing the darker sides of his hero and then having to live with that, I think also strains the relationship a little bit. And Endeavor is just, again, Endeavor. Like, I don't know if he'll ever really get along with anybody. But yeah, that's what makes that dynamic cool. And then we get Tokoyami and Jiro flying in for the fight. She loses an ear. It looks like she definitely at least loses like the earphone jack part, which is rough. I don't know what her life is going to be like after that if she can still keep fighting, but she shakes it off, and they are like, "Hey, you were messing with our friends. You're about to go down. We don't care how powerful you are." And I just think that is a fascinating angle because, again, the extras stepping up is one of the reasons why I love this series, where we do have like 50 characters, and you may not love all of them, but at least they all do something. Something that we've talked about before is like you have a giant cast, you have a smaller cast than this, and then a lot of characters don't get time to shine. I know Demon Slayer, we kind of get upset that Zenitsu and Inosuke don't get as much time as we want them to. That's a way smaller cast than MHA. I don't think I've ever watched my hero and said, "Man, I wish X character got a moment," because I think all of them get at least one, which I think is fascinating. Any other thoughts before we move on to the big one?
I think you're hitting the nail on the head on that arc. But yeah, I'm all for going into the big one.
Okay, so we cut back. I guess we have to reset the stage. We never actually talked about this. They divide them up. Deku gets yanked by Himiko Toga through the wrong portal, which I said on Twitter, I love this moment because it's so Spider-Man. How she doesn't trigger danger sense because she loves him in her own twisted way. Very Spider-Man Venom of her, you know? I love the moment between him and Uraraka where he wants to stay, but he has to trust that her and Sue can just handle it, and he leaves, and she is gonna have to fight this fight on her own. He's got to get to Shigaraki. Bakugo, Best Jeanist, Mirako, Nejire Hado, and Sun Eater have to fight Shigaraki. We have Phantom Thief and Eraserhead turning off Shigaraki's quirks. And they're in the Coffin in the Sky, which is UA, now
Beautiful
above the
name.
ground. It's amazing. Made by Power Loader and Mei Hatsume, because they just put this together, powered by Denki Kaminari and the rest of the electrical like heroes. And Yaoyorozu is building plates on the spot to keep the thing afloat. It's insane. It's ridiculous, and I love how it all still makes sense. It's like when they explain this, I'm like, this is wild. How'd y'all do this in a week?
It's the best battle arena I've ever seen. Like, it's one of my favorites, honestly, because again, this goes back to the writer. I'm just like, how do you think of this? Like, so many characters, such unique quirks, but somehow everyone has a role, and like, it's so beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, it's great. I love how, like you said, everybody has a role, but Deku surprisingly is not involved at all right now. So it's up to the extras to fight Tomura Shigaraki. What did you think of the like? His quirks are turned off, but his body's just evolving, so we get like all these gross fingers just like shooting out of him, filling the arena up. Visually, it's crazy in the show. Like in the manga, it was great, but like they're all CG and gross in the anime.
Like you said, it's like he wrote a screenplay and not a manga.
But I mean, it also kind of feels very in line or in tune with the show. Like, we're already talking about people who have these very unique quirks. Some have more than one. All for One has been trying to combine quirks over and over and over. We have the Nomu and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So seeing just Shiggy just also now have the mutation to just be able to just keep expanding his body. It's so gross, but I'm like, this is a character who, like, he had multiple hands, attached to his body. So I'm like, of course he would have the ability to then stretch his influence or at least make more copies of this one part of his body. It's it's interesting, but I will also say it. Sometimes it may have felt like it came out of left field, but I'm not mad at it. Not mad at it at
Yeah.
all.
I know I often get mad at All for One in general of like I wish we know like I wish there was like notes of what his quirks are. You know, because it feels like it feels like they could just be like ass pulls at some points, if that makes sense. Or it's just like, oh, of course you have that power. Sure, that makes sense. Like I don't know what his power set is, and even when Star destroys his quirks, like what quirks did he? What quirks did she destroy? What did he lose? I don't know what he has. So it's just like, okay, well he's depowered, and we just have to accept it a little bit without actually knowing what his powers are, which is just this late in the series. I feel like we should have like Deku should have a notebook of every quirk he's seen, so we have a rough idea of what his powers are, right? I feel like that would be in line with the character, and that could have been a way to give us like the Cliff Notes version. But this fight is interesting because they have to stall for time until Deku can fly there on his own because he's out of range of Kurogiri and Monoma using Kurogiri's power. By the way, I love Monoma, like his entire mini arc of like always being irrelevant and like now he's the main player and he's just living his best life. And it's just like, okay, that's cool. Again, everybody gets a moment back. So we have these characters fighting Shigaraki, getting nowhere. Miriko, she's got like a rocket arm now to kind of help keep things at bay. Bakugo gets like this new suit where he's got like a bunch of mini turrets on his shoulders, just like shooting fingers down. But again, it's a stalemate. But the big three show up to help. Mirio shows up. I love how the show handles the million in the sense that we know he's not the strongest person there, but his presence and how he uses his abilities are always super helpful because like he's not gonna like one shot Shigaraki. He's not that strong in that sense, but him just being a nuisance and say he doesn't have friends and making him spaz out is just like, okay, that's so interesting, and I love it. I just love how he and the big three also can combine their powers. I'm gonna stop talking about this though. I'm gonna let Cliff jump in and talk about his boy a little bit because Lemillion's back and it's glorious.
Oh, it's such a beautiful thing. It is such a beautiful thing. I love the big three so much. I They might be my favorite characters, and they're barely in the show. But yeah, this is just a beautiful match. Like each episode, I am so locked in. And yeah, obviously when Lemillion pops up, because I was trying to figure out, I was really genuinely thinking like, where does he fit into all this? Like, what does my boy who can phase through anything and arguably is faster than Ingenium, which is very funny because I was thinking about when you mentioned Deku, not being with them, I was just like, that's also would be a great time for Ingenium to be doing this thing, just spazzing around all of Japan, different locations. Like, hey, we need to get him here, go, and all that stuff.
That is what he
But
did at the end of season 1, actually, where it's like that they got trapped at the USJ, and his entire job was go get All Might, and he goes and brings All Might to that fight. It's like, okay, they could have went back to that. That's a good point.
Yeah, it also just made me think because we learned that technically Lemillion was doing this at the same time because of how fast he is. Like he's the one who's going back and forth, like delivering information to people. I believe.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But
I think I think they were teleporting him some of the way, but yeah, he's basically just like making sure everybody knows what's going on.
Yeah, and again, it made me wonder is like how does a quirk like that work within the final arc, the big battle, our end game, if you will. And I hate to make that reference, but
trust me, Horikoshi is going to make that reference. Don't worry.
He going to make that.
He wrote this for context. He wrote this arc in 2020. We're coming off of Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame. You will see your Marvel references later on. Do not worry.
Okay. So All Might's about to. Okay, all right, cool. But yeah, and then just seeing how.
Oh God, I am here.
He's going to do the pose. It has to happen one last time. Like we need him to do boom, Don't worry, have no
I
fear.
mean,
Do the hand thing. I am here, etc. But go ahead,
I
Isaac.
mean, I was just gonna say a certain Spider-Man post was just briefly mentioned when they talked about the the traitor part. I can't recall his name again. The mind
Aoyama.
control. Ayama. I
Oh, you
was
mean
talking
Shinso?
about Shinzo. Thank you. You see him just hanging out there. It's just Spider-Man.
Yeah,
So
he's just. I mean, Deku's entire kit is Spider-Man. I think I love how this is going back a little bit, but like I love how all of Deku's quirks are just to make him Spider-Man. It's like, okay, sure. He's got danger sense. He's got webs now. He's super strong. It's like, okay, he's Spider-Man. He's got smoke screen, I guess, but he's Peter Parker. But yeah, I love
He's
the
got
big
smoke
three's
screen.
role in this of like, and I love seeing just like Chimera Sun Eater of like, hey, this was the move we had in the back pocket. Uh, if
Definition of
Deku
a
like,
true leader. Like,
yeah, right, like his quirk to me is the most interesting one in the entire show, because it's like, so whatever you eat, that's the ability you can create, and like as soon as they introduce that, I'm like the combinations can be endless, and we see that and they see that evolution, and seeing more of Hado, we don't really get a lot of Nejire of the three, but like just seeing her as a child and like her have to like close herself in because she was a little too outgoing and extroverted, and it was a little off-putting for some people. But she's exactly what Sun Eater needed, and that's why that friendship between the three of them works. And I'm just like, beautiful. I love you, Team Seven. You're the best.
and is it safe to say that our homegirl was on the spectrum? At least that's. I wanted to make sure that
Oh yeah, definitely.
that her personality. Okay, yeah, because during I was like, oh, I love her. She's great. And I just wanted to make sure that I was reading those scenes correctly.
Yeah, I mean, even when
But
she's first introduced, when Aizawa like brings them into the classroom, like these are the big three. That Mirio's just like there flexing, showing how strong he is, and then Tamaki is just in the corner, like trying to hide, and then she's just bouncing all over the class. Ooh, you've got horns. Ooh, you're a frog. Ooh, you're not smiling. You must be the mean one. And it's just like she's clearly getting distracted and wants to meet everybody and have a good time. So it's like, yeah, she's on the spectrum, which I think again, I love that. I love how all of these characters feel unique and different, and in the context of this whole theme of the extra stepping up, right? I love Bakugo in this fight having a second quirk evolution because he had one last season, but he had a second one this season where he has the internal monologue of like him having to chase Izuku and can he still keep up, and him learning to fight with a broken arm. That's one thing I noticed watching that episode of like Shigaraki breaks his arm and he's out of the fight for like half the episode after that. And I'm like, that's interesting how now characters feel pain, but that became part of like Deku's been fighting in pain this entire time. And Bakugo is now realizing what it takes to be on Izuku's level. And so I love when he goes in to fight Shigaraki. It's probably the most beautifully animated the show's ever been, ever. And I know I just said that about Shoto versus Tapi, but like they outdid themselves again after that.
yeah, no, I agree. And as y'all know, I wasn't the biggest Bakugo fan. Like I've always, when it comes to our like shonen animes, I've never been a fan of the one like friend who's kind of a jerk, but like, yes, you are a badass, and rightfully so, you deserve that. But at the same time, you don't have to be a jerk sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I've never liked that in like shonen, but like, hey, it's here to stay. But like, this is the moment that Bakugo really changed for us. Just like, oh, he finally understands it. Here we go. He gets what well, I mean, he's kind of understood this before, but in this moment, in the final fight, he finally understands what it takes, and he just goes off. And again, I didn't even think that like, oh, if he just builds up enough sweat, he can essentially become the Flash, quote unquote. And I know we're making a lot of Flash references today, but like we're just talking about
Brandon
speed,
would
and
be
a lot of
so
characters
proud
just
of
get
us.
fat.
hey, I
And
thought we
he's
talked
not
about
here.
Flash Gordon here.
Okay. No, but yeah, like him increasing the speed is just again, it's one of those things where visually watching that animated, because you can read the text that says that, and it's just like, oh, the panels they have a blur effect on him now, so we can tell he's moving fast. It's like, oh, he was like speed of light fast in that second, where like Shigaraki just looks and there's a hand already in his face. It's like, oh my gosh. And I love the
Like he's beating
realization.
the sound barrier and everything. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
I love the realization after that of Shigaraki still ends up shaking it off, and he's just like, am I really this far behind you, Izuku? Because he didn't make his biggest move, his best ability still wasn't good enough. Which, again, Bakugo's entire arc, I have a TikTok on Bakugo. It's 7 minutes long of me explaining Bakugo's entire arc in the story, if you guys want to check that out. But Bakugo's entire arc of being humbled and realizing he's the extra and not the main character really comes to a head at the end of that episode, and it's heartbreaking because he gets the death flashbacks that every character gets. JJK spoilers, but they did that in that season when character was about to die. They conveniently got flashbacks. Naruto's notably doing that too all the time. So Bakugo has the realizations, and he realizes what it means to be a hero finally, the right way. Again, if we're talking about how hero society can shape you, Bakugo's view of All Might was also very different from Deku's. Not that either of them were wrong, but he viewed All Might as power. Deku viewed All Might almost like a savior, which is why they act completely different in how they idolize All Might. But Bakugo realizes his actions and all that stuff, and he's finally, like he said, accepted this new version of himself, right? He's been slowly changing since season 1, but it feels like finally he's at the height of his character arc, and then his heart explodes. And then Avengers reference, trading card gets bloody, falls to the wayside, never got it signed. Cliffhanger.
Oh, how those were the days. Those were the days.
So we're gonna hold a moment of silence, guys. If you want to like this video, subscribe so you don't miss a thing. This is what we did when this chapter dropped in the manga for Katsuki Bakugo. Rest in peace.
Beautiful. Yes,
Exposure.
beautiful.
You mean to tell me this all takes place in 2016?
Well, remember, the manga starts in 2016. And 1 year, 2015. And 1 year has passed. So, yes, this is all in 2016. You know, Bakugo and Deku are probably going to go watch Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice after this. That's the sad part.
That's what I say. This is what we did. This is what we should have done. Like, see, this is how we hated each other, remember? Well, then again, Bakugo's dead, so he can't do that, so never mind.
Pour one out for the boy. Isaac, I'm going to let you get your victory lap out the way, and then Cliff and I will have an actual conversation about Bakugo's death. So go for it.
I mean, how should I put it? I remember when the manga did this chapter, and boy, was I smug. I think you can. I think you remember how much of an asshole I was during that recording.
It was insufferable, honestly. God, if you want, go listen to the chapter. We'll link it in the description.
Yeah,
Go listen to that
really.
chapter review when this happened, and how much of a dick Isaac was.
I honestly don't regret it because I'm not a fan of this character whatsoever. Mike, I will admit, have given me some form of a changed perspective, but I still don't like that character. So good job on that, Mike, to switch my perspective in some regards, at least.
Progress. Go watch the TikTok. You'll be mad that he's gone now.
No. But I have to say they handled that scene very well, and I honestly think they handled, like often said these days, I think they actually handle this better than in the manga, but again, he wrote the manga like it was a screenplay, not a manga, for after a while.
Which is so fascinating because now these final chapters of the manga, without spoiling them, I'm also struggling. Like, how are you gonna adapt this to the anime? Because I'm just like, these don't make full episodes. They're like short stories in the epilogue, and it's like, okay, that's cool,
They
but that's gonna be like a
probably
10-minute
filling
episode.
stuff in. They probably do some, in lack of better terms, they probably do some Hashira training arc like UFO Table did, just filling in the
Expand on it
blanks.
in the show. Yeah.
Yes.
Cliff, it was funny because you were like live reacting when you watched this episode, and we literally see in like our spoiler chat the highs of like Bakugo going off, and then immediately it's just like Rachel McAdams and Game Night, like, yes, oh no, he died. Talk us through that.
Man, listen, that was I don't know because I'm a big fan of characters getting their big moment and then they get to celebrate it. But no,
Yeah,
we were on a high. Bakugo is like, this is my boy right now. Like, yes, keep going at Shigaraki. Like, do what you need to do. And then they do the whole, boom, 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 boom. It's like, of all the characters you want to kill off, you want to do Bakugo. Like, again, I didn't like this character for years.
yeah,
We all have our reasons and whatnot, but after I was just like, at least let him get that moment with Deku. Be like, hey, I get it. I've done what I could. Go do what you gotta do. Save the day for us. Blah 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 blah.
yeah. Not
I
even the dying
I
in
did my
Deku's
part. Let's go
arms
on.
thing. You know, it's just like,
Like
boom,
no one's
gone.
there for him. Like Shoto's not there. Like all the people that he has like the closest bonds with are not around him per se. And I'm just like, it's such a fallen soldier like in battle moment for me that I couldn't believe it because I was on such a high, and then that happened. I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go. I legit sat in silence for like 10 minutes, just like, all right, they just did that. Okay, we're here. I need a break. I need a break from the show for like 2 weeks now.
This is why the show went on break, probably. I can finally show you the volume cover for this arc because it was a spoiler, and I haven't shared it, but like, this is what that cover is. And it's like, dang. So when Deku shows up, things aren't going to go too well, probably, and that's why Shigaraki did it. And I think that's what makes it hurt a lot more because we know that, again, Bakugo is being used as fuel to the fire for Deku. Because, like, Shigaraki's like, you're the closest person to him that's here, and I'm going to take advantage of that. And he does. And it's brutal. It's painful, especially like Best Jeanist. You're right, Best Jeanist is probably the closest person to him that's there. Because he did train with him for a while, and he's the person who
Maybe
told him.
erasure.
Yeah, and it's it's messed up that even though Monoma and Bakugo don't get along that well, he can't look away. He has to just see his fellow classmate like just die, and he can't blink because if he blinks, everyone else dies, and it's like that is painful for these kids. Bakugo again dying here is such a fascinating story beat. It feels a little anticlimactic, right? Because we did just have that high, and then this episode is called "Light Fades to Rain," and that blue sky that everybody complains about is finally gone. It is a cloudy day. We cut to his parents, and his mom and dad are a little concerned, and it's just like, dang, ending. And then we get a cliffhanger, which in the manga we also got a cliffhanger. So I'm glad the anime is making y'all feel that pain a little bit longer. Because yeah, it's something. I think we're probably gonna cut to Uraka and Toka after this, and we'll see how that story develops. But that is part one of MHA. It's crazy. It's painful. It's intense. It took my least favorite arc of the story and made it probably the best season of the anime. which to me is a feat I never expected. Are there any closing thoughts from either of you on this season so far? And what I guess for Cliff, what do you want to see next? Because you don't know what's coming.
I know I was about to ask like how much more pain do I have to deal with? Like my can I go any lower?
To answer that question, how much more pain? A little bit more
Like I
pain.
know
You're gonna
okay
get some
because I
highs
know
though. You're
like
gonna get
all
some
my
great highs.
okay. Okay, because I was gonna say I know all my and Deku have to come together and all that stuff all for one. Like I know it's leading to more chaos and more just
Oh yeah, I
heartbreaking
mean, All for
moments
One
for
didn't
me.
even
But
lose to Endeavor. Remember? It's just
that's
like
right, he didn't. Oh,
that's something that we
it's
completely glossed over. It's like, oh yeah, he conveniently has Aries quirk. This is why I hate this man. When did he get that?
mhm. His
So
quirk
yeah,
is that he just can do everything and
He's a
anything. He has
wandering
everything
of
everywhere all at once.
convenience.
his quirk is plot device, plot armor.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Literally. But yeah,
No,
what am I looking forward to? Just that's the thing. I don't know because this is a show where I just want just take me on a journey, take me on a ride. I don't want to. I don't want to see anything. I don't want any wants. I don't want to take any guesses. Just complete the story that you start off. I would like to see Stain again, maybe. If I doubt he's going to pop up, but like if he showed up for any reason, cool. But besides that, nah. I just take me on this journey. We're on the home stretch. After Attack
yeah.
on Titan ended, this is the only other show I have that's like in its final arc. So like, just I'm committed.
What's funny
Let's
is
let's go. Let's
JJK
get a home
is,
run.
but you didn't realize that.
I did not like. I started reading. I was just like, wait, we just got season two. How is this? Like this story is already ending. Like we don't even have enough of Sukuna's fingers yet to do any of this. But
Yeah, this is where we're gonna do the plug, Isaac. We have a video coming out about like the future of shonen manga because you're right. Like JJK just got season 2, right? But like My Hero is, I feel like My Hero is the final chapter of like the long running shonen manga. Like it's gonna end at 430 chapters, which is still significantly shorter. Naruto ended at 700. One Piece is gonna go well past 1,000. But 430 feels like that no other story is gonna get that far because Kaiju number 8 is getting close to the end. JJK is gonna end later this year, and so I feel like they're all gonna stop around like 100, maybe 200 max chapters. So like MHA is like the turning point in shonen manga. Like this is probably like the last like great long running shonen.
I disagree on that, but more on that in the
Why do you
episode.
disagree when I just said no other? Like I'm talking about like chapter count. Nothing is getting
Yeah,
close to it. You think something's gonna
I
pass My Hero?
yes,
Okay, talk
yes.
to me. We're gonna take a second. Talk to me. Talk to me.
Akane and Spy X Family. I think we'll pass that, especially Spy because you can easily pass that over 430.
I mean, My Hero could keep going. They're choosing to stop. I mean, you can't. You can easily keep telling superhero stories. You know.
Yeah, I know,
All right.
but I
I mean,
think
Kagurabashi's so young. I'd like to pause on that a little bit. Spy,
Akanebashi. I
maybe.
said.
Oh,
I said
okay. Got you. Got you.
like
All
so.
so like I know. It's like what are we going to like? What is the next big shonen? And I know that's a obviously we'll have that conversation in the future. But like I'm just curious. Like, are there any contenders for what can take over in terms of like a long
Akanebashi.
form series?
Without more specific details, more on that in the video that comes out on Thursday. My feeling so right now is Akanibashi, Sakamoto, or I don't know if it's on any game, Sakamoto Days, Spy X Family, and Akanibashi, Spy X Family, Sakamoto Days. And I haven't read it myself, but from what I've heard of it, depending on how it goes, Kagurabachi.
Uh huh. Those are all the ones that are currently running that are starting to pop off. Also, anime wise, if Studio Pierrot can fix Boruto, that is currently like the highest selling manga right now, and it is great. And it's like it's a
They have
classic.
said they have said that they will give it a seasonal treatment once Bleach is over,
Thank God.
which is a
For
good thing.
God, I never wanted Bleach to be more over. But no, Boruto
And
is
here I am
really
thinking
good.
Bleach is one of the shows I have to watch.
I will forever die on the hill that you do not. But you know what? Everybody will tell
Honestly,
you
eh,
otherwise.
I as a big Bleach fan, Cliff, I can tell you right now, read the manga instead. The anime leaves much to be desired prior to the current anime season. That one is fantastic.
So for
Okay.
context, Bleach aired during the Naruto One Piece era of like late '90s, early 2000s. Didn't finish its ending. Thousand Year Blood War comes out like a year or 2 years ago, and that's of course 2020 anime quality, which is vastly different from when it started. So yeah, so it
Yeah.
looks great. This is a lot better representation of Bleach, but yeah, to understand what's happening in that arc, just read the book if you're gonna do it.
Yeah, honestly, to some extent, I'm surprised that they didn't reboot slash remade Bleach from the start instead of doing the last arc. Honestly,
Yeah, but again, like if they do Boruto seasonally, that would be great because that is a great continuation of the Naruto story, that Naruto world. The anime was just very poor. It's a poor representation of what that manga was. So if they can get it back on track, Boruto might just pop off. Honestly, like we have the new one, sure, but like Boruto could probably just replace Demon Slayer and MHA and JJK on its own because it's an easy sell too. People love Naruto. To wrap this one up, this has been My Hero Academia Season 7 Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe so you don't miss a thing. If you want us to cover Part 2, let us know in the comments down below. Next week, we will be talking on the My Hero manga. It's going to be a live stream the day that final chapter drops. It's going to be a party. It's going to be a celebration of what this story is and see what that ending is going to be like. Because after this week's chapter, I wonder how he's going to close it out. It needs to be 50 pages. It needs to be a 50-page chapter instead of the usual 15 because that's the last time we're ever going to see these characters, probably, unless they announce a spinoff soon, which I wouldn't put it past them.
or sequel.
Or a sequel. I mean, My Hero Academia could just follow, like, the teachers of UA, and he's like, well, here's their next class. Here's Eraserhead's next batch of kids. Let's go. But yeah, that's it for us. Cliff, where can people find you? What you got going on? What's the haps?
Don't have much going on, just out here living life, just enjoying the summer, honestly. That's a better way of putting it. Like, I'm just
Heck yeah.
outside, even in the 90-degree heat, which is insane. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Cliff and La La Land for all our La La Land fans out there. You can find me there and on Letterbox, just watching movies, enjoying stories, reading comics, manga, the usual, just trying to be a nerd for as long as I possibly can.
Heck yes. Isaac, what you got going on, buddy?
Well, you can find me here at the Amateur Otaku Pod. You can find my writing at the Wolf Writes, and well, no, I will announce that later on. But I have another project that is starting up next week. Actually, I'm gonna pick that one up.
To
So
be continued. Gotcha.
exactly. And you can find me at Emblemaniac on Twitter. No, I'm not gonna be that extreme, but yeah. And you can find the pod at Chirotako over at Twitter as well.
Yes, sir. You can find us at the Amateur Otaku wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be YouTube, whether that be Spotify, whether that be Apple Podcasts. We are there. Check out the Chatter After. That's the movie podcast where we talk everything in movies, TV. We covered concerts over there too. That's fun. Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom. Maybe we'll talk about that. Maybe we'll talk about Deadpool. Really got to just see how we're feeling. We could either be MCU'd out or we're gonna just be like on a high talking about all of this stuff. It's a flip of the coin. We'll have to see. We're definitely gonna have to talk.
Right. This was
superheroes
a
and
wild
animation.
weekend.
It's been a crazy week, man. Like this video, like I'm glad we're doing it. It's been an awesome conversation, but it's also like, man, a lot happened. I'm glad my hero's on break. It would have got, you know what? They went on break on purpose. They knew that there's a lot of crossover between the superhero audience in this show. Batman Caped Crusaders drops this week. Go check that out. We'll probably cover that. We're doing a video on animation and superheroes, and maybe MHA will pop up in that discussion too, because it counts as animation and superheroes. So tune in for that. I'm Mike, Novice Cinephile. You can find me everywhere at Novice Cinephile, especially on TikTok and Twitter and YouTube. Also, Collider.com, The Novice Cinephile on Instagram and Threads. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And remember, the past never dies, and you too can become a hero. Peace.
Hero.
Plus Ultra.